I think a sense of public dissatisfaction develops. And certainly in the case of homelessness, there's an enormous amount of public dissatisfaction because spending in that particular area in particular cities, especially in California, did rise a lot. In the state of California, they do a lot of programs and tax increases via direct voter initiative. So it's direct democracy. It's like ballot box budgeting, they call it. So somebody will say, I want to ask the people of Los Angeles if they are willing to tax themselves, to issue bonds, to $1 billion in bonds to build more housing for the homeless. So a citizen puts that on the ballot, it gets certified, there's a process, and then, so that happened in several contexts in California throughout the 2010s, and the voters said, yes, we want to raise taxes on ourselves, we want to issue more debt, we want to spend more money on homelessness. We want to do it because it's the right thing to do, because we want to get these people off the streets. So they did that, but the results were really not very impressive. And the situation in the streets in San Francisco and Los Angeles are still disgraceful. So public dissatisfaction develops. So then you're looking for this sort of tipping point, inflection point. Where do we go that's different? But it becomes difficult to really consider dramatic change because oftentimes those programs have developed constituencies. The people who receive the funds to provide the services, to build the housing, so they're kind of really attached to the status quo. They have various reasons to argue why it's, don't believe your eyes, it's working, we just need to do it a little bit more. And they hold on very, very powerfully to the status quo. School systems are very similar. It's just very difficult to really change things differently in a school system because these workforces are so big. So you end up talking about just very minor changes, marginal differences between what you were doing 5 years ago and what you want to be doing next year. Because when, it just becomes very, there's the inertia, the sclerosis, the vested interests, and eventually people get exhausted and they move on to the next thing. China, inflation, guns, whatever. So they wait you out, and the public will eventually move on, and so many of these problems just don't wind up getting much better.
We often don't know where the tipping point to beyond the law of diminishing returns. You wrote in an article, Judge Mylan Smith explained in a dissenting agreement from a finding which basically said that everybody has a right to shelter and laws shouldn't be made that punish people for not having a home. So that was a discussion around vagrancy laws that have effectively been struck down by the courts in America. The dissenting judge said, look, shelter can be very expensive, but not all cities can afford it for the homeless individuals within their boundaries. New York City, which has a right to shelter, spends over $3 billion on homeless services. That's more than the fire department, libraries and parks combined. Now, if the choice is between funding shelter at the level of New York or allowing people to sleep in public, many communities will likely have to accept the latter option. To me, the very fact that you've got a judge making those sorts of comments shows that you have judges, and I know that you have elected judges in America, so it is slightly different, making decisions on policy. Frankly, that kind of what really concerns me. We're seeing the same thing starting to develop in Australia, where we have a legal caste who is really, really keen to strike down legislation from our parliament. What's your take on the separation of powers over there? Like, should judges be able to, and putting aside the rights or the wrong, I actually think that was a magnificent observation, incidentally, but the fact that you've got a judge talking about matters of political policy that could or should be discussed in Parliament, I don't know, mate. That really
right. And when you're talking, and what you're really talking about is not just the judge, but these lawyers who know how to work the system. They know, it's not just that they know the judges to work with, but they know, so people who decided that they know what's best on homelessness, on funding of public schools, criminal justice, whatever, some sort of question that they frame as a question of civil rights. I mean, this really goes back in America to the Martin Luther King's civil rights movement, where you had, Black Americans were just completely cut out from the political process. Like, they couldn't settle their affairs through democracy. So the people advocating on their behalf had to work through the courts. So they had to very patiently develop these arguments that eventually prevailed at the Supreme Court level. And that was pivotal in pushing along the progress of, civil rights and the cause of Black equality. And eventually laws were passed too, but everyone would say that that court process was important there. So then what happens in the 60s, it's become, well, civil rights is not just about Black Americans, which, is a really specific case when you think about it. You're talking about the legacy of slavery and then these, this system of segregation that followed slavery. But no, it's not just about that. It's about women, it's about disabled people, it's about, immigrants, I mean, everybody. So whenever you have one of those groups that you think is not being treated in the way that you think is right, you think that the people, the American public, is not going to agree with you, you figure out a legal strategy. They don't even bother with trying to go through the democratic process. It's, you work through the courts. So yeah, you have all these cities in California who now get their homeless policy handed to them by courts. If you're some city who's starting to have an encampment problem, and the local elected officials get together and they say, all right, well, we need to start passing new laws, or we need to start telling the police department to really step it up to enforce the laws we already have on the books. Very soon into those discussions, you're gonna get a letter from some law firm. It's not even from your city. It's probably from a big city like LA or San Francisco, who said, yeah, I hear what you guys are talking about. I just want to put you on notice that this federal court has decided, which is in your jurisdiction, already said, you can't do that. So you guys better knock it off, stop it right now. Otherwise, we're going to come at you. And you're going to have a lengthy legal process that you're going to have to go through. You're going to have to hire outside law firms, spend millions on that. And at the end of the day, you're going to lose because you don't get to decide what type of homeless policy you want. The courts have decided, the case is closed. So it's very frustrating, but this is something that America has been going on for, a half century or more. But it's also very bad for the democratic process in the sense that you get very poor quality legislation. Legislators don't even bother crafting effective laws because they realize so much of the power is not even up to them. So you attract a lot of unserious people to the legislatures. It's a mess, but and it's completely undemocratic. But we people have been at it for a while. And again, it's not just the judges; it's these outside law firms who figured it all out.
Exactly what's happening in Australia and with us, because we have massive, and when I say massive bureaucracies, I mean massive bureaucracies. I think it's something like, and I may stand corrected on this stat, I think it's something like just a little bit over, so somewhere between 1 person in 3 and 1 person in 4 is now employed by the government in some way, even if they're in an NGO that's being funded, because people say, oh, I'm an NGO, but it's being funded by the government.
Of course, yeah.
It's like, no. You're working for the government. Well, for us, it's distorting democracy. So you have people, in Australia, not just getting people seeking the legal solution to, we lost the election, we don't like that. The people in Parliament, in the legislature, are doing stuff that we don't really agree with. So yes, you do get the legal stuff, but even more insidious here in Australia, and this is a massive problem, we have the administrative solution. So you'll have a government just go, no, we're just going to do this administratively.
That's a big problem in America too. We have this phrase that we call the deep state, particularly at the federal level, where theoretically, these agencies were set up by some law, some enabling legislation, and they have to be accountable to Congress, but they figure out ways to elude that oversight. And so it just operates on autopilot. And they can also develop and implement policies that only have the most superficial connection to some original enabling legislation passed by the people's representatives. They're experts. They know where all the levers are. They know where all the levers are even better than the members of Congress do. So, every president runs for power claiming that they're going to get a handle on this, that they're going to be the one in charge, but it eludes them. They never really get a handle on it.
Yeah, look, we now have entire government departments that aren't even governed by legislation. Like,
yeah,
they're not even pretending anymore. It's like, yeah, well, see that government department? We're just going to pass administrative. They're going to do
like Trump may be an extreme example, but Trump comes into power and he understands that the vast, the federal bureaucracy is made up of people who hate him. Like most people who work for him hate him. So he can talk a big game about how he's going to get at them. He's going to bring them in line. But the level of political will, attention, technical knowledge you would really need to do something like that is just way beyond any, president's ability. And so, no one would say that, Trump didn't get anywhere with, trying to get a handle on this sort of deep state problem.
And you think about the implications for democracy, really. It's like, what's the point of voting? Why would you do that? It's one of the things I always really admired about American democracy is I thought it was you elect everyone, like in a lot of these municipal places, like the person picking up the garbage.
Right, the dog catcher, yeah.
The local sheriff, the judges. I was always ambivalent about that, and my mind is still in.
Not all judges are elected, but some are, yeah.
Yeah, but I still, I just don't know how I feel about that. But what's the point? Not even the laws. Well, the laws are being made by unaccountable, unelected people. They're being.
It drives a lot of cynicism. The people are very cynical, very distrustful. In fact, the Supreme Court, which is the highest court, who's not elected, public opinion of the Supreme Court tends to be higher than that of Congress, who is just regarded as trivial, not even just interested in going viral, getting elected, raising money. So it's a big problem. Yeah, this level of cynicism.